So thank you for joining us on this podcast today. This is Viewpoint Ministries podcast. All right, so today we are looking at the character of a person called to serve. The character of a person called to serve. Many of the times when we hear someone is serving in one capacity or the other, and sometimes they say when you climb the top, the charisma might take you there, but the characters that will keep you there. What is the importance of the character of a person called to serve? Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. Like you rightly said at the beginning of your statement, there is character and there is charisma. There is a calling and there is something that keeps you in the place where you can still remain relevant to the home who has called you to serve. The character you display is what keeps you as a vessel in the hands of God. The Bible makes us to know that in a great house, there are many kinds of vessels, some to honor and some to dishonor. And so when it comes to serving God, God does not pick on the dishonorable vessels. He will pick on the honorable ones. And that is what will keep you at the place that where your service is going to be acceptable to God, and that is about your character.
Wow, thank you so much, sir. God picks on the honorable person, not dishonorable person. So when you are looking at this topic right here, the character of a person called to serve, how do you encourage someone who will one day want to be in the position of a leader? And sometimes being in a position of a leader could come because there is a need for a change in leadership, or because even in our home, right? If somehow we are in a position of a leader in one shape or the other. What would be your advice to people generally who aspire to be in the position of a leader one day?
All right. It's good to aspire to leadership. In fact, the Bible tells us that he who desires the office of a bishop desires a good thing. So God is not condemning us, even when in church or in other places, as long as we are not trying to put down someone to become the leader. But if you are desiring to be a leader in order to be of service to God and humanity and your generation, it's something that God accepts and God honors. But to serve God would demand, to be in the leadership position would demand some things from each one of us, and to be able to do it well. Like you said, could be in the home. We just find ourselves, we're already leaders in our home. We get married, you have kids. In the church, a position becomes vacant. Maybe your leader has to move somewhere, and then leadership mantle falls on you. What are you going to do in order for God to serve you, to use you in the service in the way that will be pleasing to Him? I have 4 things. Maybe I can go on to say that. Yeah, I have 4 things. Number 1 thing is relationship. You see, service is not number 1. The first thing about serving God is having a relationship with God. You see, we must always remember that we are not doing our own work. We call it the work of God. If you're doing the work of a God that you do not know, it is like walking in futility. So you must know the work, whose work you want to do. And that comes because you have a relationship with Him. There are some people who may be running up and down there and they don't know God. And I wonder, whose work are they doing? Because when it comes to doing the work of God, being of service to God, God tells you what He wants you to do. It is His work. It is not your work. It is not my work. If it is His work, then there must be a relationship with Him. And don't forget when we quoted that you must be a vessel. You must first be a vessel that He has cleaned, that is from the relationship of getting born again, of becoming his own. He's the one that purifies you and makes you that acceptable, honorable vessel. The second thing about serving God, the character that you must display, is that you must be a person that is in constant fellowship with this God. Okay, I talked about relationship. You know God, but you must desire constant fellowship with him. In fellowship, we are talking about loving to be in his presence. You are yearning to look into his face. When we talk about fellowship in our contemporary world, we are talking about wanting to be together. So if fellowship with God is wanting to be with him, it's your yearning. You are singing to him, you are worshiping him, you are praying to him everywhere you are. Your heart is knitted with him. You want him in your and that's going to help you not to be in a place where he doesn't want you to be, or where he cannot be with you. So you want to be in fellowship with him. So number one is relationship. Number two is fellowship. Number three is listening. And I want to say constant listening. If you want to be a person that will serve God, you must be a constant listener. You see, God is so big and his work is so large that it will not divulge to you at one time what you need to know about the work, because the work is in stages. Let's take example of Moses. When Moses was working with him, was listening, God told him at one stand that take your rod, Moses, and strike the rock. The second time that God spoke to him, he told him also take your rod, but he didn't listen to what followed. Although God told him to take his rod, God told him to speak to the rock. But he didn't hear, he just heard, take your rod. And he just took his rod and said, normally we strike the rock. And he went there and struck the, and sincerely, that's what he thought, because he said, must we bring water for you? So he had thought that he and God were co-equals. So you must be constantly listening. Look at when God led Israel to part the Red Sea, it was Moses' rod. When he led them to part the Jordan River, it was the feet of the priests carrying the ark of God. So it was completely different. If Joshua was not listening, they would have thought, our master Moses led us through the sea by striking the rod. I'm sure Joshua also had a rod, probably. He would have probably touched it, but he listened to God and God helped him. So number three is constantly listening to God. And number four is trusting God. And this is very big, because there are some things God will ask you to do that you will look at it and say, God, do you really mean it? Are you really asking me to do this? Are you sure who you are talking to? Like Moses told God, when God asked him to go lead his people out, he's like, Lord, choose whoever you will choose, not me, because he saw the responsibility too big for his personality. And that's going to happen to any one of us as we walk with God. We're going to see some responsibilities too big for our personalities. But a man that God will use must be someone who keeps trusting God. Because if God is the one that is saying to you, go do it, that means he knows the way to raise up all the help, to give you all the support, be it financial or human resources, and everything that God is going to give to you in order to get the work done. So the man that God will use, even if he does all of these things, he's going to take care of many other things. Because you are constantly fellowship with God, God is going to keep you on track. He's going to keep you on track. So you're not going to go out of the way because you are always in fellowship. He's going to, you can't go that route. He's going to keep you in check at all times. And if you are listening to him all the time, like Jesus said in the book of John chapter 10, my sheep hear my voice and they follow me. He said, others would they not follow. So if you are listening to him, you're going to hear him and you will not follow others. And if you are trusting him, every mountain is a level ground, because you know the God that has called you to serve. Every mountain is a plain ground, and every valley is a filled up ground before the man who trusts the Lord.
If you trust the Lord, every mountain is a playing ground. Very important and very interesting. Thank you so much, sir. A man that God will use must be in relationship with God, you said. Be in constant fellowship with God. Listen to God regularly, daily, per second. Trusting God. God will not give the whole agenda. It would be nice if that was, if that actually possible, where God say, hey, this is what I want done, and He give the whole picture. And sometimes that is why it's difficult for us to obey God, because sometimes it does not make sense. The thing is not mentally making sense to us, but God has a really huge agenda that is fulfilling through us. But because we cannot see the whole package, then we don't see it to make sense. Wow, very important. Thank you so much, sir, for coming on today's podcast platform with Viewpoint Ministries. We appreciate you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
And then we hope we will get to have you again next time. Wow, relationship, fellowship, listening, and trusting. Very important. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
All right, stay with us in the studio. To everybody that is listening to us at this moment, this is Viewpoint Ministry, and this is the podcast platform where you have just listened to Dr. Drojael Jatayo talking about the character of a person called to serve. The character of a person called to serve. Make yourself usable. Make yourself available. Listen to God. Get in relationship with God. Trust God. Without this, you cannot do anything. And in all of those, if you don't read your Bible, you can't get any of those correctly. You can't get them right, because the Bible is written for our use, for our good use. That is where we learn. That is where we get instructions from. Anyway, that is it for you today on this platform, where we look at a particular topic in a brief moment and we get to discuss it. But until you get to listen to us again, we encourage you that you earnestly contend for the faith. I am Solomon Oluwabiye, and until next time, have a wonderful week, everyone.